This is Out of Bounds. How about that?
I said to you when you showed me this before the program began, I wish you had showed it to me live because I was oohing and awing and cooing and losing my mind. How fantastic is that? How good is that, Jaguar fans that may be tuning in right now? This is Out of Bounds.
This is Out of Bounds. Thank you to our crew here at Know Your News for throwing that fantastic little intro video together. It's the first Out of Bounds of the year 2023. That's me, O'Brien. I'm John Alba, and we have a fantastic episode to get us kicked off in style with the wild, the weird, and the wacky in all of sports. Mia, how was your New Year's?
It was very nice, John. It was very stress-free for the most part, and that I really appreciated. Did have to host the good old Jaguars kickoff show at a lovely 8 a.m. on New Year's Day. So that was a little less than desirable, but got a quick nap in and was ready to rumble and enjoy the rest of the weekend. And for the first time in my young life, I have today off from my day job because it's a bank holiday and a government holiday. And I've never had that being in the news business for the past 7 years of my life.
It's wild to think that there is life outside of that, but I'm glad you're able to enjoy it. We got to hang out last week. That was always fun.
We were trying, folks. We were efforting having a live, like two of us together. But since my family was over, we were like,
we were told it's all good. Take the holidays off. We hope everyone in Out of Bounds land had a great holiday for the past few weeks for whatever you celebrate. Special thanks to Jordan Katz for filling in a couple weeks ago as well. And we are ready to rock and roll with a busy slate here on Out of Bounds for 2023. So, Mia, let's not waste any more time. It is the opportunity for our opening toast here.
I'm gonna actually I swear I'm not gonna do that New Year, new diet thing. Like, that's not me. But I actually have some kombucha. Yes, I have some kombucha tonight, trying to cleanse everything that I have the food that I've put into my body, the 18 pounds I probably gained from the holidays. So cheers to everyone having a happy and a healthy 2023, whether that health be via whatever kombucha is considered, the lovely whiskey that John is patronaging. That's not a word. Doesn't matter. Hope everyone enjoys this new year and makes it the best yet.
That is some caramel whiskey, and I'm all about it. It really livens me up a little bit, Mia. It gets the blood rushing just a little bit.
How about peanut butter whiskey? That's what I have currently.
I've got that right here.
Yes, there it is. Thank you, folks. There we go.
We got the whiskey lineup here. We got the caramel whiskey. We've got the peanut butter whiskey. And then just in case we're not feeling super dark for the day, we got the JMO. So
of course, you've been doing a lot of JMO in the month of December. So I'm glad to see you've seen the light.
Yes,
you've come to the caramel side in January.
I see it. I'm living that gimmick every single week here on Out of Bounds. Something that really gets me jonesed up as well. The NFL playoffs. We are knocking on the door of the NFL playoffs, thanks in large part due to some pretty incredible action this past week. There's a great line from Thanos in Avengers Endgame 2018, or Avengers Infinity War 2018 and Avengers Endgame 2019, where he says, "I am inevitable," and then snaps. Tom Brady, he's inevitable. He got his Tampa Bay Bucks back in it after a slow start, and as you like to bring up so often, a divorce, to win the NFC South.
My brother who doesn't watch the NFL literally brought it up again last night. Continue.
I'm sure he did. Aaron Rodgers willing the Packers back from irrelevance. They're knocking on the doors of the NFL playoffs. Mike Tomlin, Kenny Pickett, the Steelers, they pull off an upset of the Ravens. They're knocking on the doors of the NFL playoffs. These three teams that we were writing off months ago could find themselves in the big dance. One of them for sure. Mia, who is more inevitable? Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, or Mike Tomlin, the level of consistency, the benchmark of consistency in NFL coaches?
So I want to start with this, which is the news of the day in my land. And don't worry, we will be diving into the Jacksonville Jaguars being flexed into prime time on Saturday later in the program. As of this writing, I believe Sunday Night Football has released, which I reported last night, that the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions will be the final Sunday night game of the regular season. That has people losing their minds because if the Seahawks win earlier in the day on Sunday, the Lions will be eliminated before they even take the field at Lambeau. And so, why would you put that game in prime time? Aaron Rodgers. It's that simple. When I talk to folks over at NBC, he's a ratings machine. Their story is crazy.
Well, it could be Aaron Rodgers' last game with the Packers, too, in theory.
Also that. It's a win and in for the Packers, which if you had told someone that 2 months ago, they never would have believed you. And that's just who he is. And I agree. He's inevitable. However, I am going to go with Mike Tomlin because the stats are absolutely ridiculous. I understand in the postseason he's 8-9 all time, and that's a losing record. But the dude has been to the playoffs every year. He has been the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. John, he has been the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers since 2007 when we were in the 8th grade. That is unfathomable. And so the fact that he's been able to turn lemons into lemonade with the likes of Kenny Pickett, or heck, even during the COVID year in 2020, where he barely had a quarterback, correct me if I'm wrong, once Ben Roethlisberger went down. It was patchwork with Mason Rudolph and company. Like, how this guy keeps getting away with this, I do not know. It says to me, in reality, with all due respect to Bill Belichick, who, of course, is going to go down as perhaps the greatest coach of all time, Mike Tomlin should also be in the conversation because it's not like he has this one great quarterback that's doing it for him. Because Ben Roethlisberger at the end of his career, as much as he may be a Hall of Famer, I don't think that he's in the same conversation as a game changer like a Tom Brady.
No, I think a lot of it has to do with the way that division is constructed as well. Historically speaking, it's a pretty
yes.
It's a pretty consistently constructed division. And I think when you have the way of the land looking that way, you know what your path to winning is. And I think that has helped the Steelers have sustained longevity in the NFL under Mike Tomlin. I respect that pick. I'm not going to hate against that pick. He is an all-time great coach as far as I'm concerned. I think it's great, especially that he's an African-American head coach with that longevity. That's great for the game. That's important.
People almost forget about that too, which is like, for all the, everything that, everyone is doing to try to create more diversity, especially in those higher positions of power in the coaching ranks, in the front office suites. Like, it's huge what Mike Tomlin is doing. And the fact that, Brian Flores is on his staff. Like, he's not a guy that's just like doing what he's doing and then not helping the next one in line either. So thank you for bringing that up as well.
But the answer is Tom Brady.
No.
I'm sorry.
That division is awful.
The division is bad. I get it.
Because that's the thing. The Steelers division, I understand it's usually the Bengals and the Browns are a disaster and you just got to get past the Ravens. And all 4 teams are constructed in the trenches. I totally respect that. But this year, that division could have 3 playoff teams. The NFC South, excuse me. We're going to get to the AFC South, which is equally as abysmal. The NFC South, like, what
was the story?
Sam Darnold. You have to get past Sam Darnold in the year of our Lord 2023.
We were talking about at the beginning of the season. We were talking about how Tom Brady was going to face his ultimate test this year because he lost his entire offensive line in training camp. And he's 45 years old. He's playing at the age that he said that, I want to play until I'm 45. He came out of retirement to cement that, and he still made the playoffs. I don't care if your division is bad. Making the playoffs in the NFL is a really hard thing to do. Even as they expand to the playoffs, it's still a really hard thing to do. It's harder when you're a quarterback who is not mobile like Tom Brady in that circumstances, when you're his age and the weapons are constantly changing around you under a different head coach this year as well. This is one of the more impressive stories that we've seen this year in football and will fly under the radar because he's Tom Brady and it is expected that he will win. And it is because he is expected to win, Mia, that Tom Brady is inevitable. And guess what? I wouldn't want to face the Buccaneers in the playoffs. I understand. I'm still not taking my chances against Tom Brady because if I'm in a close game against Tom Brady, I don't like my chances.
They're lucky they play in the NFC, by the way. I'm pulling up the NFC playoff picture because, I know with this writing, I believe it's the Cowboys. I know the Eagles are like messing around, but I believe it would be the Cowboys.
It would still be the Eagles at this point. depending on
that
what
would
happens.
that would have the 1 seed.
Yeah.
But
You're
that would face the Buccaneers as the 4 seed.
Brady can beat the Cowboys. Brady can absolutely beat the Cowboys.
I think actually no. So 4, what's it? So the 4 goes against the.
It would be Brady and the Cowboys. I'm fairly certain.
Yeah, I think that's what it would be. I mean, that's.
And the Cowboys.
I wouldn't pick against Brady because he's going against the Cowboys.
Cowboys have never beaten Tom Brady. They've never beaten him.
Correct. So I agree with you. But if they were going against, I don't know, the 49ers, I'm picking the Niners. If they were going against even the upstart Giants, I might be tempted to pick the Giants. If they're going against, the Vikings, I don't trust with a 39.5-foot pole. But the Eagles, again, if they were playing in the AFC.
You find yourself in a shootout against Tom Brady. That's not
with Byron Leftwich in him, who barely can get through a game calling plays. Their running game is averaging less than 50 yards per carry in almost every 50 yards a game in almost every game this year.
I just think, historically speaking, until the man has hung up his cleats for the final time, that you can never bet against this guy in big situations. And this is not me saying the Bucs are going to make a Super Bowl run. I don't think the Bucs are going to make a Super Bowl run. Someone will beat them in the postseason. It might happen in the first round. Could. But to me, Mia, until this man retires, he is the most inevitable thing there is.
But you have to admit, in terms of path to the playoffs, the Steelers one is absurd.
Yeah. 100%.
That's last year the Steelers one was absurd. They needed the Jaguars, the 2-win Jaguars, to beat the Indianapolis Colts in the final week of the regular season for them to even have a chance to get into the playoffs last year. And it's looking like another wacky scenario now this year after their improbable wins last night and then over the Raiders a few weeks ago. Although now that one doesn't look quite as nice with all the drama going on in Las Vegas.
No, it certainly does not.
Speaking of teams that will be playing in the postseason, and I alluded to them a little bit earlier, John, let us give our flower. Let's give Daniel Jones his flowers. Let us pay our respects to the New York Football Giants, who will be making their first playoff appearance since 2016. That was the banana boat year, folks. Ignore my washing machine making noises in the background. Daniel Jones, a guy that was much maligned when Dave Gettleman took him with the 6th overall pick in the 2019 NFL Draft, handpicked by the Manning family. Faced with god-awful football, the crazy New York media, and an outraged Giants fan base over his first 4 seasons, in the league. Let me do the math. This is his 4th year in the league. So his first 3 seasons, his 5th-year option was not picked up by first-year head coach Brian Daboll and company this offseason. And now Daniel Jones has led the New York Football Giants to the postseason for the first time in 6 years.
Look at that face. That is a quarterback, Mia.
As our resident Giants, I won't say fan because you are a fan, but I know you don't but you follow the Giants more than I do. How monumental is this moment, but also how sustainable is this offense with Daniel Jones at the helm?
Daniel Jones proved this year that the Giants can win with him. And that is all you needed to know coming into this season. He showed poise. He cut his turnovers down significantly. The Giants had 30 offensive turnovers coming into last season. Pardon me. Let me rewind there. They were 30th in the NFL in turnovers last season offensively, and they cut that down to 15th in the league this year. When you are able to cut your turnovers down in half, that's pretty significant in the grand scheme of things, and him fumbling the ball is a big part of that. When you make that big step, you make that big jump, because Peyton Manning and Eli Manning both had that problem too in their early days in the NFL where they were fumbling.
So did Tiki Barber.
And Tiki Barber did as well. When you cut down on that, it makes a dramatic difference in your offensive presentation and how you can conduct business. The Giants have no weapons offensively outside of Saquon Barkley. They have none. And Daniel Jones made it work with his legs. He created one in the tight end, Daniel Bellinger. And now this is a squad that if you were to tell me you were putting money on them to beat the Minnesota Vikings if they end up playing them in the first round of the playoffs, I could buy that bet. I could buy that bet. If you were to tell me coming into this year that we'd be talking about that for the New York Giants this year, there's just no way. And Mia, it's a credit to a few things. It's a credit to the right man being the head coach, which I think more than anything else.
And that was going to be my follow-up question to you. How much of this is Daniel Jones versus how much of this is Brian Daboll?
I mean, a lot of it's Brian Daboll. It's not just with Daniel Jones. Daboll changed everything. He changed the whole culture there. But Daniel Jones took a step up and he earned a contract. And I want to give my flowers because, yes, it's true. Many fans out there said, hey, you look like a guy that would have played Eli Manning in a Hallmark Channel movie. And you know what? You'd be right in saying so. He didn't have
because Eli Manning would have casted him.
That's right. He didn't have a lot of fire. He didn't play with a lot of spark. He got hurt a lot. There were concerns about his long-term neck and back sustainability coming into the season. We deserve, or rather, Daniel Jones deserves our respect, Mayo O'Brien. And I think he has proven himself to be a top 10 quarterback in the league this year.
Top 10. Oh, wow.
I
That's
think
spicy.
so. Because statistically, it's not going to show it. But his game management took a big step up. In playoffs, what matters most? It matters how you manage the tempo of a game. Because if you can put yourself in a position to win late, that's all you need to do.
Which the San Francisco 49ers currently have a game manager in Brock Purdy as their quarterback. That is obviously because of injuries. At the same time, while Kyle Shanahan has proven you can get to the Super Bowl with a game manager, he went out and he drafted Trey Lance because he believed you need a quarterback who will take you over the top to win said Super Bowl. And so my question is Daniel Jones just a game manager? Is that good enough for Brian Daboll and his staff and the front office?
Right now, with what the Giants have for him, yeah. Because the Giants don't have a lot of talent offensively outside of Saquon Barkley. So if you are relying on someone to maximize the talent around you, keep the tempo of the game going, keep your offensive tempo moving, this is exactly the type of guy you need. And he shows that he's not afraid to take that bootleg and run out. That is somewhat, he's the most athletic quarterback the Giants have ever had, period. So I think I don't think it's out of the realm of reasonability to suggest that this man is a top 10 quarterback right now in the NFL, even if his numbers don't show it. And if you disagree with me, that's fine. Leave a chat, leave a super chat. Go to kynchat.com. Let us know. We'll read your chat on air, or you just go right into YouTube and leave it there as well, because I would love to know if you disagree. And if you disagree, great. We encourage healthy debate here.
We love the YouTube chats. We love our super chats. You're someone who likes to
pile on players for the memes and the lulls. I get it.
Can I ask you, speaking of memes and lulls, can I ask you one more question? And maybe this will also get us some super chats and comments. Okay. Since I don't see this on our rundown for tonight, but I want to pivot to it briefly. Staying in the New York metropolitan area, driving home from the Jaguars Jets game that I covered. But of course, I'm from New Jersey, so I was able to stay at my parents' house. Driving home at 2 a.m. and listening to WFAN The Fan and the crazy Jets fans calling in and the quarterbacks that they would and would not like for the Jets to target this offseason. They poo-pooed the possibility of Daniel Jones staying at MetLife but changing what jersey he wears. Number one, I thought that was crazy because, to your point, Daniel Jones has been way better than any quarterback the Jets have this year. But also, too, both the Giants and the Jets, what is their quarterback situation in 2023, 2024, and then even 4 or 5 years from now?
I think the Giants have to make a legitimate offer to Daniel Jones. I do. And look, if you're wrong on him, well, you made a bet coming off a year where he gave you no reasons to doubt him. There's nothing that Daniel Jones did playing-wise this year that makes me say they can't win with this guy. Is he going to be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL? Probably not. But we've seen teams win Super Bowls with guys who were not top 5 quarterbacks. Even in a league that is so quarterback-driven, we've seen guys that are not top 5 quarterbacks win Super Bowls. As far as the Jets go, look, that's a team where roster construction-wise, they might even be in a little more of a position to win now than the Giants were, and the quarterback play just kind of docked them a little bit. So I think they need to go out and get a quarterback for a short-term fix before you develop another one. Go get a big name. If Aaron Rodgers becomes available, the New York Jets should be all in on Aaron Rodgers. Go get a 2-year fix from him. See what you can get out of that. I know Lamar Jackson's a name, obviously, that comes to mind too. But yeah, I think the Jets are definitely more in a win now mode in that regard.
I got such a kick out of all the Jets fans who were like, it's Rodgers, Lamar, or bust. And I'm like, you may want to drop your expectations a little bit to Jimmy Garoppolo, Derek Carr, just in case. It
could be Derek Carr, but I'm not giving up a lot of assets for Derek Carr.
Yeah, that's true. Which of those two teams, though, in New York, which one do you think more likely to draft a quarterback day 1 or day 2 of this year's NFL draft?
The Jets.
Not the Giants. You don't think the Giants are going to draft a quarterback at all?
I mean, the Giants might draft a quarterback at some point, but if you're asking me which team's more likely to, it's the Jets. I think the Giants the Giants have a long-term answer at quarterback. It's Daniel
Jones.
Daniel Jones proved he is worth the investment. Now, will it pay off? Who's to say? But you can't, if let me put it this way, Mia. If Daniel Jones gets a good contract and he flames out, you can't blame the Giants for giving him the contract because he proved that he deserved the offer. I really do believe that. And I'm the first to be super critical on something like that, but I really do believe it.
I've never seen you get so fired up. This is great. Let's keep this energy going.
I'm being measured here because we're going to talk about a quarterback that you get fired up about on the daily and the Jaguars. All right, break this down for us. So the Jaguars and the Titans are going to play for the AFC South title. It's been an ugly division. It's been an ugly year, but the Jags are hot right now, and the Titans are not. The Titans come into this game. This is going to be played on Saturday night. The Titans come into this game with extra rest because they played this past Thursday. The Jaguars will have to turn around on short rest and play this game with all the marbles on the line. Winners in, losers out. Mayo O'Brien, did the Jaguars get hosed here?
Yeah, I mean, on the surface it says that, but in my opinion, just go play the game. Maybe that's an old school approach, but moreover, the Jaguars do have home field advantage. I'm sure if you ask the NFL, their excuse would be, well, the Jaguars played the Texans on Sunday, and the Texans are playing for the right to draft C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young. So, they rested. I mean, they were up 21-0 before the first quarter was over, John. And
that was my point, by the way. I want to say this real quick on the Giants thing. When the Giants went into the second half with that,
against the Colts. We didn't even talk about the Snow Angels and Nick Foles.
Well, and all that. But when the Giants went into the second half with the lead, I knew it was different, Mia, because I wasn't even worried. I said, they're going to win this game. And
well, John, it's funny you say that.
And all that stuff, but yeah.
Funny you say that, because I would say that's how most Jaguar fans should feel. A lot do feel that way, because it feels different, right? When you have an adult as your head coach, like an actual competent, nothing against some predecessors to Doug Peterson and Brian Dable, but when you have a guy who has, like you said earlier in the program, established a culture and an expectation, win or lose, this is how we approach our job. There's something to be said about that, because when the players start believing it, everyone in the building starts believing it. Heck, even the media that spend a lot of time in the building are like, yeah, I am confident. And moreover, I could tell you this, John, the Jacksonville Jaguar fan base, obviously, and we talked about it off the top, because Jacksonville is a smaller media market, they're always going to get the shaft from national media and from the executives, and they don't want them on national. Because Aaron Rodgers is a bigger draw, even though Green Bay is a smaller media market, but who cares? So to which I say this, historically speaking, during the dire years between the Mark Brunell era and the modern era of Blake Bortles, there actually were tarps placed on certain areas of TIA Bank Field and Everbank Field because they couldn't sell those tickets. There were blackouts. There were local blackouts in the area because they were trying to get people to go to Jaguar games. I can tell you this. I fully expect Saturday night to be the most pro-Jags crowd outside of the 2017 season that we have seen in Jacksonville since the year 2000. And that is going to be absolutely epic. There's rumors that it's going to be a teal out. I think that that's going to be amazing television. And you cannot lose, even with the wacky history of the Jaguars and the Titans, with that sort of momentum. But even if you take all that external noise away, because I talked to Doug Peterson this morning and he said this, even if you take all this external noise away, they have a plan. And they have been executing the plan. They have been focused. This is your routine. This is what you do. You don't get too high. You don't get too low for 4 weeks now. And they've won all 4. And to be quite frank, they've done it for 6 weeks. They've won 5 of 6. That trip up to Detroit where they laid an egg was probably the best thing for them because they learned, okay, maybe you don't read your own press clippings. Maybe you don't smell your own farts. And now look at them. So, am I still concerned because the Titans have the Jaguar killer, Derrick Henry? Yes. Does it stink that the Titans literally rested all their starters for Thursday Night Football against the Cowboys because the game was meaningless, and now they get an extra 3 days rest on top of that? Yeah, sure. But the Jaguars aren't going to be complaining when they get an extra day's rest for the playoffs, week 1.
Well, I look at it more, when you're hot like the Jaguars are, you don't necessarily want to take your foot off the pedal. And
they won 3 games in 12 days.
Would it be nice to have some rest? Of course. It lets you guys get healthy. But when you're hot, you don't want to sit too long
Mhm.
because you're riding that. You're feeling that momentum. There's a lot of teams, and we talked about a lot during the baseball playoffs where these long layoffs were happening. It's like, man, those teams just
Just to get it on a certain day of the week. Like,
yeah.
I get media ratings, but like, come on.
So one day less of rest than what they typically would have gotten. I really don't think it makes that big of a difference. I mean, maybe you know
I mean,
more
like
than I
I'll tell
do.
you that, yeah, like our schedule is going to be condensed this week. So like tomorrow is typically the Tuesday is typically the off day. Players will be in the building, but not practicing. Like they're just going to do a walkthrough. And then Friday will be what Saturday usually is, which is a walkthrough. But at the end of the day, all anyone has wanted is for this team to be in prime time, get a standalone game. You got Buck and Aikman coming.
Well,
Like,
and you're not practicing this week to
nah,
get better. You're practicing this week to beat the Titans.
correct.
So a lot of other weeks
Which involves a lot of resting because you're going to be going against Derrick Henry.
right, and a lot of weeks when NFL teams are practicing, the first half of that week is spent on fixing mistakes from the week prior and just trying to improve as players. You don't need that at this point. You know what
Doug said. Doug's like, we're not watching the Texans game. I asked him. He's like, we're on to Tennessee.
No, you're not playing for that kind of stuff. You're not playing. Oh, I'd like to see a little more awareness from this player. No, you're playing to beat the packages that the Titans bring your way, and that's ultimately what that boils down to. That's why, really, I don't look at this as the Jaguars getting hosed per se.
No, if anything, I look at it as a great opportunity. National television audience, the only game on the docket. Bowl season will be over.
And let's also be
Go
real
play the
here, too.
game.
Say what you want. The Packers and the Lions, those are institutional NFL franchises versus the Jaguars and the Titans, which are not.
Correct.
It's as simple as that.
No, and like, listen, at the end of the day, until he starts winning Super Bowls and MVPs, Trevor Lawrence is not the draw that Aaron Rodgers is.
No. And like I said, I think one thing we didn't really talk
is.
about, I think the idea that this could be Aaron Rodgers' last game with the Packers is also a very important storyline that draws eyes. So regardless of whether the Lions are still eligible or not. And yeah, I very much believe.
Also, let's be real. The Lions Renaissance has been a lot of fun as well. So, I mean, I enjoy Dan Campbell. I first I didn't think I would because some of those hoorah guys, like I'm like, I don't really like Big Brain down in Miami. I can't wait. I love Mike McDaniel. I think he's hilarious. But I accurately predicted in August this flame out of the Dolphins and like Brandon Staley, the other Big Brain in Los Angeles. Like, I can't get behind that. Dan Campbell, man's man. Love it. And he walks the walk too. He talks the talk, walks the walk. I appreciate that. Leave a super chat if you enjoy Dan Campbell, or if you don't enjoy him, or Doug Peterson, or Mike McDaniel, Trevor Lawrence, Aaron Rodgers, all the friends. Leave comments on YouTube and more. We appreciate it. And also, it just helps the cause because then we get to talk about it more. Speaking of people who like to talk, Jim Harbaugh. The Athletic is reporting that the University of Michigan alum and head coach is NFL bound if he gets an offer to return to the league. The Broncos and the Colts are considered contenders at this time. Michigan lost to TCU in the college football playoff semifinals, in case you missed that Saturday night, with some questionable officiating, though. John, is this an appropriate way for Harbaugh's tenure to end at his alma mater?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. Listen. I feel like every year we talk about, is Harbaugh NFL bound? Is Harbaugh? I feel like since the year that he left for Michigan, they were already talking about, is he NFL bound? Did he bring a little bit of prestige back to the Michigan name? He did.
Yes.
There were some bad seasons. That 2020 season was abominable in Ann Arbor.
You went to the playoff the next year, though.
But they come back, they rebound, brought some prestige back, and Michigan
beat Ohio State, most noteworthy.
They just beat them, crushed them, and that matters significantly. That was a bad loss to TCU. Not taking anything away from TCU. TCU played the best game in the history of the program against Michigan, but once again, Harbaugh coming up short here. It's amazing. This guy, and this is nothing against Jim Harbaugh personally or professionally even, but this guy has never won the big one across the NFL or college football. But he's getting a lot of opportunities even
Did you
so.
know he's in the Colts Ring of Honor sidebar? Like, how?
I mean, he was there for a while. He was there with the Colts. And that's why I think if the Colts came to him and were like, hey, we want you as our head coach, I don't think the Colts are a bad fit for Jim Harbaugh because you're not committed long-term to any quarterback of any sort there. So he could build however he wants to in that regard. He has a history with the city as well. If I'm a head coach, I want like nothing to do with the Denver Broncos job right now.
Yeah,
I really
agree
want
more.
nothing to do with that. So yeah, would this be appropriate? Coming up short when it matters and then making the jump? Yeah, I think
very on brand.
I think it is. And again, to all these people, and I see it every single day in my timeline, who say the transfer portal is the worst thing. Players can just go wherever. Look what these coaches do year in and year out in both the NFL and college football, especially college football.
We also know that Jim Irsay loves his former players. He likes making them coaches. I just want to put that on the record.
There's no loyalty whatsoever among college football coaches to programs. Very few outliers there. This is appropriate to me, Mia. What say you?
Yep. I mean, how else is he going to go? Like by winning a natty with Kirby Smart and Nick Saban still in the game? I don't see that happening anytime soon. I'd rather, bet on pigs to start flying because I just don't see him beating either of those programs.
Look, the reality is we were potentially a few calls away, a few snaps away from getting Ohio State versus Michigan in the national championship game. I mean, we were very close to that.
Which would have been in the same year, I guess, same-ish year of UNC Duke in the Final Four, which would have been incredible for content purposes. But at the same time, Ohio State losing at the buzzer on a missed field goal was also fantastic for content purposes. No, I think that the fact of the matter is for Jim Harbaugh, has he hit his ceiling outside of making a national championship game?
That is a valuable question to ask because when you see these 2 years of success here,
he won 2 Big Ten titles. He beat Ohio State twice.
You've got people wanting to come play for Michigan again. And if you're going to give up on that, there's going to be a lot of what ifs. Well, what if Harbaugh had stayed and he didn't get a chance to prove that this winning culture was being built? I don't know. I mean, it's tough. And if you're a Michigan fan, I feel for you because that's really crappy. But at the same time, that's the nature of the business. That's just how it is. And
it would be funny if he goes from one former home in Michigan to Indianapolis. I think he could spin that, knowing him. He would spin that into like, well, I'm going home again in a different way.
I do think that it was deliberate, especially since last year there were talks of him potentially jumping back to the NFL. I do think
going to Minnesota, where apparently he assumed he had the job in the bag.
I think it's deliberate that he came back for another year knowing if I prove that I can lead this Michigan team once again to the playoff, then no team can deny me in the NFL. And it's true. They can't. I mean, let's not take anything away here either. Jim Harbaugh was a really good coach for a period of time with the 49ers.
He went to a Super Bowl.
He brought them. They were knocking on the door in 2011 against the Giants. And then the next year they go to the Super Bowl. So let's not take anything away from him in that sense. Just saying.
Always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
But, as you alluded to, we got this insane Ohio State-Georgia game. This game was nuts. Both games really were just absolutely outstanding. And the coolest thing about this was the New Year's ball in Times Square dropped on the East Coast right as Noah Ruggles' 50-yard field goal went wide left for Ohio State. And Georgia beats OSU by 1 to advance to the college football playoff title game against TCU. This was incredible sports theater, outstanding drama. You could not have asked for anything more. And one thing that I kept hearing from people is like, why would you play a bowl game this late? Why would you? Because you allow yourself opportunities like this, where it's just so unique and probably something that's never going to happen again, just like that. Was this the best college football playoff we've ever seen?
Yes. We haven't seen both playoff games, both playoff semifinal games be competitive. People will always draw upon, and I know Stetson Bennett brought it up in his post-game interview, they'll always go back to that Rose Bowl between Georgia and Oklahoma that Baker Mayfield played in back in 2017. They'll always go back to that one. But the other one was a bust that year. That was the Kelly Bryant stinks game. So, like that's the problem. Or even like Joe Burrow and LSU, arguably one of the best college football teams of all time, blasted Jalen Hurts and Oklahoma. Both dudes are doing okay in the NFL. Both those rosters turned dozens of NFL talent. But for whatever the reason, we've had at least one blowout. And so the fact that both games were as competitive as they were back and forth and wacky. Like I said this when we were brainstorming what we wanted to talk about tonight. Like I said, as someone who's a huge proponent of the 12-team playoff, like I couldn't have been happier. I couldn't have been happier that that's what occurred Saturday night.
Then does this negate the need for the 12-team expanded playoff? Because it shows us that we can get a great playoff.
No, because if I heard one more time from Alabama fans that they could have beaten all 4 of these teams, I would have a lot of money if I took a penny from each of them each time. Yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is that the FCS has been using a playoff bracket and letting 16 teams in for years.
And it's great.
It's competitive. People watch the games. Even if it's 16 versus 1, it's competitive. And even if it's not competitive, people are still going to watch the games because more football will be watched. It's as simple as that. But I honestly think the 12-team playoff, and I would have been okay with an 8-team playoff as well. It's about giving 5, 6, 7, and 8 a chance. Because I do believe if you had given Alabama a chance, they could have run the table. You saw Ohio State, the 4 seed in the first year of the playoff, run the table. Look at what Tulane is your Cotton Bowl champion. So for everyone that told me that number 12
Tulane is the only wave that we allow in this house.
There it is. Everyone who told me Tulane would have gotten blasted by Alabama, ask USC how that went for them. So yeah, I like the idea of, in a country where we value March Madness and the NCAA tournament and Cinderellas, the thought of having that in football is pretty unique. I understand they're 2 different sports. I understand that football, you only play one day, once a week, as opposed to in basketball where you can play multiple games in a single weekend, let alone a week. But this country loves the underdog. Why wouldn't you want to let more underdogs in? I don't understand that.
I don't disagree with you. I really did think that this was just outstanding sports theater where you had the very best of every element of sport that you love on display here, including the element of the human element where, yeah, maybe the refs did miss some calls. And can that hurt fan bases? Sure, that can hurt. It can suck, but sports rule when we feel with the action that's going on. And there was so much of that across these 2 games, even if you had no vested interest in either of these games. My brother-in-law is a diehard Georgia Bulldogs fan. And he was with my sister and all their friends at New Year's in the city as the ball was dropping. They weren't in Times Square, but they were in the city. And the ball's dropping, literally hits 0 as the kick goes up. My sister goes to plant one on him, and he's got his phone up on the side like this, just because he's got all the vested interest in the world. That's amazing. That's outstanding. We need more of that. I'm all for New Year's Eve football. I think it's great. And college football playoff adds to the importance of that. So I'm all about it. But you could argue, Mia, that was the best of bowl season. You would be wrong because something was even better. Was it not?
I love the Duke's Mayo Bowl. I love it so much. Even in a barn burner, like the game we had between NC State and Maryland, it still delivered. A fan chugged a jar of mayo.
You see that right
in the stands.
On the right.
Did you also see Mike Loxley with the mayo on him? It was like a meme waiting to happen. John, is this admirable or disgusting? Would you ever chug mayonnaise out of a jar?
Not straight mayo. I don't think I mean, look at this. Look at that commitment there. That is a double-fisted mayo chug from this.
It looks like it's a cone.
Well, because he's smashing it against his face.
I know, but it looks like a cone. It looks like he ate mayo in the cone. I love ice cream.
Well, that ain't ice cream.
I know.
That's mayonnaise. And I am Mr. Foodie. I'm a Guy Fieri addict. I'm all about condiments. I think condiments are great. I love different variations of mayo. A nice spicy mayo, perhaps an aioli. I'm all about that stuff. Even a Japanese mayo. But straight up Duke's mayonnaise, and I hate eggs with every fiber of my body, which is just essentially straight up liquefied eggs. I am not giving this man kudos. That was an act of Satanism from this man who chugged this jar of mayonnaise.
I don't know about you. I have a pork tenderloin in the oven right now, and now I'm wondering if I should be dipping it in mayo.
Just dipping it?
Yeah, you know me. I used to dip everything in French dressing, and I dip a lot of things in ranch dressing.
Yeah,
Like
but
when you cut it up. And,
mayo alone, just
yeah.
dipping something in mayo. And again, I'm not shaming mayonnaise per se. I'm not going to shame mayonnaise because I think mayonnaise.
This is a good thing, by the way, John, because this ensures that you're not a Tennessee Titans fan. They love to eat their mayo straight. So
I think mayonnaise can add complexity to the flavor profile of the food. But straight up out of a jar, what is appealing about that, Mia? Please, I need you to explain that to me. Yes, a good William in the chat, even though it's not super chat, we had a good sriracha aioli. Absolutely, yes.
yeah, that I would have it in a heartbeat, William.
About it.
I mean, you're doing it because it's kind of like, why do you drink eggnog at Christmas?
I don't.
I feel like morally, I don't even like. I'll like have a little sip of it, and I'm like, because it's Christmas. It's the Duke's Mayo Bowl. That's why you have to have some mayo.
Listen, guys, I'm serious. Leave a super chat. I don't care if it's $2. Leave a super chat on YouTube right now. Let us know how much would you have to be paid to chug a full-size jar of mayonnaise.
We're not making this a weekly wager. Don't worry. We're not going to subject John to that.
I just want you to know that I'm very curious in all of our fans' vested interest here. What monetary amount would you need to chug a jar of mayonnaise? What would you say, Mia? What would you value that at for you personally?
Probably like $300.
300?
Yeah.
You chug an entire jar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would I have a knife?
I mean, you can use whatever you do. You got to
if I could use a knife or a spoon, yeah, I'd do the $300.
You got to consume this entire jar in one sitting.
Yeah. Do I get like bread or chips or no? Just straight mayo?
No, straight mayo.
Yeah.
Oh my god. 300?
I like mayo. Yeah. You just like think about other things while you're
it's
consuming it. That's what she said.
For me, it is at least $1,000. At least $1,000 minimum. And I'm again, I don't.
That's also because, like you said, you don't eat eggs. So
ugh.
I had eggs yesterday and today.
Can't do it. Can't do it. Can't do it. Won't do it. We'll do this. The Winter Classic. This went down at Fenway Park. The Penguins and the Bruins. The Bruins picking up a 2-1 win today. Just so scenic and fantastic. I've had a chance to cover hockey at Fenway. I've had a chance to cover football at Fenway. It is such a special venue, and seeing that environment is really, really incredible. But I ask you, Mia, as someone who I'm sure has been to your fair share of venues, perhaps even some historic venues in your own right, what is one venue you'd like to see hold one of these offshoot events, and what would that event be? Just something atypical.
Well, first I want to start with this. Like, a lot of my dream scenarios have already been realized. I mean, I got to cover a Pinstripe Bowl, which as a Yankees fan, that was awesome. As much as it was 17 degrees.
Yeah, but the new Yankee Stadium doesn't have the allure.
No. But it doesn't have the allure. But what was really cool is because of the nature of football, and I was filming the game, you're on the field. So you can walk into the dugout. You can walk into the bullpen. And literally, the score from the last game from the previous season was still up there. And the bullpen card, the lineup cards were there. And like that as a Yankees fan, just because of the nature of my job, that was incredible. Like, as much as, yes, I almost froze my butt off. It was incredible. The Field of Dreams, I love that they play games there now. I know that's a hot take. I understand it's not the field that was in the movie, but I do greatly appreciate the fact that now they're also going to be building a bunch of youth ballparks in that area in Dubuque and Dubuque County, Dyersville, Iowa. I personally, I think that first game between the White Sox and the Yankees, since I know you love to talk about sports theater, cinematically, John, I think that Fox, it was a masterpiece. One of the best broadcasts I have ever seen. And obviously the game delivered with a walk-off win for the White Sox. But I mean, listen, like that was gorgeous for me. And then the other one that I'll give you is back in 2015, The Iowa wrestling team, which is, of course, renowned for all the national championships that they've accumulated over the years of the Brands brothers and, of course, Dan Gable. They actually wrestled on the football field at Kinnick Stadium. So the Minnesota-Iowa football game kicked off at 7:00 at noon that day. Earlier in the day on the same field, they actually put wrestling mats on the football field, and they actually had the wrestling match. And there were as many people there for the football game as there were for the wrestling match. And that was in a year that Iowa went to the Rose Bowl. So,
but what's one venue you would like to see host one of these offshoot events? What would that event be? I'd like to see something like an NBA All-Star game or a Winter Classic in Death Valley. I think seeing something where you have literally the loudest stadium that's ever been built that is registered on the Richter scale. Seeing these superstars in that environment would be outstanding. Seeing it in the Rose Bowl, Winter Classic in the Rose Bowl would be very cool as well.
I really like I like when they play basketball, college basketball on the aircraft carrier. It is interesting. You really don't see the NBA doing anything outside. We just filmed an episode for 1010 of our high school basketball series on an outdoor court, and the high school players were complaining that it's different. It's different.
You want to know my ultimate one? This is like this would be such a no-brainer, and I can't believe that this is not something that is happening. Ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
Knicks versus Nets at Rucker Park.
Yep. I was just going to say it, actually. Yep.
And you just let them play a game of street ball, essentially. I think it is a layup for a different event and would do big numbers. Yes, literally. And seriously, guys, I would love to know what you guys have. Leave us that super chat or go to kynchat.com and we'll try to get it on as there. You can leave it right on YouTube as well. What is one venue and one event that you would like to see one of these specialty offshoot events go down as? Do any others come to mind for you?
I would say baseball in a football stadium, but we tried that in Oakland. It didn't work out too hot.
Well, it has been. The Yankees played a few exhibition games back in the late 70s and I think the early 80s at the Superdome. And it was a very unique setup. And then the Dodgers, of course, used to play at the LA Coliseum. And to left field line, it was like 250. And they had the big net up there, too. So there were just home runs being hit left and right. That it has happened before.
I was trying to think golf. Like I was trying to figure out some sort of way that.
I mean, we saw NASCAR did the LA Coliseum this past year, which was crazy.
Yep. I was trying to think of like something you could do with Augusta or the stadium course, or even obviously the atmosphere at TPC Scottsdale for the Waste Management Open. Like it creates almost like a spectacle vibe on their stadium course on I believe it's the 17th green. Something like that, but that's a tough one too. So I'll think on it.
Okay.
All right, let's keep rolling. We're going to stay in the basketball realm because, like I said, it is surprising knowing Adam Silver is one of the better commissioners in professional sports that they don't do a ton of crossover. We're going to talk about Luka Dončić. He had three 50-point showings in 5 games this past week, including a 60-point, 21 rebound, 10 assists outing against the Knicks. How many people actually knew about this? That's the first and foremost unfortunate part.
I feel like that was a pretty big deal the other day, but
yeah, I feel like people did make a big deal of it. Maybe I was just lost in the sauce of college bowl season in the Mayo. Is it wrong to infer that the Atlanta Hawks, who of course traded their the third overall pick to the Dallas Mavericks, and they got the 5th overall pick, and they took Trae Young, is it wrong to infer that they lost the trade early in their careers?
Well, Trae Young's a multiple-time All-Star. Trae Young is very much like in that conversation where he could be on a Hall of Fame trajectory. It's not implausible to suggest that. But I think we're talking about a potential top 5 point guard ever in Luka Dončić. And maybe that's a little overzealous of me to say, but for him to
I don't think it's more overzealous than Daniel Jones as a top 10 quarterback. Continue.
For him to will the Mavericks back in that game against the Knicks and to continue to develop in the way that he has under Jason Kidd, which I know Jason Kidd taking that Mavericks job, getting to work with Luka Dončić was a big appeal for him. I don't think it's too soon to say that the Hawks lost this trade.
Yeah, I don't either. No, and I don't think it's out of the realm to say what you said about him being a top 5 point guard ever, because I think in a similar vein to Steph Curry, he's going to be regarded as someone who changed the game and continued to open the pipeline from Europe to the United States and the NBA. And so, yeah, no, and look, here's the facts of the matter. The Mavericks in Luka's rookie season had Dirk Nowitzki still there, which that statue they just built outside of American Airlines Center is awesome, by the way. So great. But they just built in Dallas outside of the arena. It helped not only having Dirk that first year, I think, for Luka, but it also helped that obviously the Mavericks have been relevant. And there were already pieces around Luka when he arrives. You could argue that Trae Young had the more uphill battle. I mean, there's already talk of, will McMillan get canned this offseason? Will Trae Young have to have another new head coach again? And then, Kevin Huerter, the Red Rocket, was a sidekick. He goes out to Sacramento. Who has Trae Young consistently had in his corner in Atlanta throughout the last few seasons? Whereas Luka, yes, obviously Jalen Brunson says goodbye and goes to New York, and Dirk retires, and Boban and company and some other guys are, not always going to be in Dallas forever. But I think that at least in the front office, even with a new head coach and Jason Kidd, I feel like there's just more consistency around Luka Dončić, and that's what's allowing him to succeed. And that is why our expectations for him remain so low.
And you have ownership that's willing to invest in Mark Cuban. But I think
and are very forward-facing, of course, with Mark Cuban.
Like on any normal day, you'd be like, man, you know what? I'm still taking Trae Young as my point guard any day of the week. He's one of the elite scorers in the NBA. He plays with a lot of spunk. He's a legit blockbuster box office attraction. But I think Luka is, just look at that one stat line that you rattled off, that triple-double there. I think it was that he had the 21 rebounds. Point guards don't get that. That doesn't happen. That's not something that you're used to seeing. So for him to be able to develop that well-rounded approach to the game, it reminds me of Jason Kidd when Jason Kidd used to have all those triple doubles. He was a triple double machine. When you play in that vein and then you take it to that next level, 3 times scoring 50 points in 5 games. That is what a truly elite athlete does.
It's a Kobe, LeBron,
100%,
Michael Jordan,
100%.
Steph Curry.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's amazing that we continue to see so many generational talents pop up in the NBA. And I think a lot of it's because the nature of the game has changed, where it really is so superstar driven now more than ever. So you start to see more and more and more of these show up. I think it's a matter of us taking the time to appreciate these contributions to the game. And like you said, you're opening doors for the next generation as well. I don't think it's out of the realm of reasonability to suggest that the Hawks lost this trade. And I do think it's plausible to suggest that Luka is already on the verge of declaring himself to be an all-time great. I don't know if you have anything.
Kobe.
Okay. So what's
basketball?
What's Luka's signature? What do you do that leads you to shout Luka?
Doesn't he like to eat a ton of food before he plays? Maybe I'll eat some McDonald's.
Eat that mayonnaise and see what happens.
Yeah, anyway, there you go.
We got one more for you here on Out of Bounds. This should be a fun one. Today, 60th birthday for David Cone. And you may remember David Cone, of course, in the summer of 1999 threw a perfect game. And it's one of the more impressive perfect games ever thrown because there's a rain delay in the middle of it. And it got me thinking, Mia, about the true feat of a perfect game and how difficult it truly is to retire 27 batters without allowing anyone on base. Is a perfect game, in its essence, the hardest single in-game feat to achieve in sports?
So I had an answer for that, but then my wheels started turning, because I was going to say that I think an underrated feat that I believe is right there with the perfect game is our boy Jim Furyk and his record for a single round with a 59 or 58. Yes, 58 on a single round on the PGA Tour. I think that's incredible. But my question is,
there's going to be outliers like Wilt Chamberlain scoring 100 points, but that's also probably not something
correct.
We're again.
Because that's the other thing is a team sport versus a individual sport, because with David Cohn's perfect game versus another perfect game, how many strikeouts did he have? Versus how much did maybe a game-saving catch by an outfielder affect the outcome of the game?
That is also the thing, though. Like, you are reliant on your teammates playing well around you in addition to you being good. David Cohn had 10 strikeouts in that game.
Right.
And it was one of the
17 other outs, he needed help.
Yeah, but listen, man, I mean, that is relying on your defense to be freaking stellar.
Right.
So
because I was going to respond with, I mean, have we ever seen a quarterback have a perfect passer rating in the National Football League?
After how many attempts?
Well said.
Yeah.
Let's say 20.
Sure. Yeah,
have we ever seen someone go 20 of 20?
I'm not sure, honestly.
Because that's what I would say. Only because that's another one where there's so many external factors as well.
I think I like your point about yeah, here we go. Okay. So actually several have done a perfect passer rating.
Okay.
But in terms of completing all of your passes, let's see here. I'm scrolling through the list as we go. I don't see anyone who was perfect in terms of attempts and completions. So I don't believe that has happened at that level. But again, I think when you're pushed against records like Furyk was, I mean, to have the intestinal fortitude and the focus to be able to put yourself in that moment and be consistent through 18 holes is so incredibly difficult. No questions asked about that. But I also think hitting a baseball that's 98 miles an hour coming at you is maybe the hardest thing that you can possibly do in sports. I still really do genuinely believe that. So to be able to play at that level of consistency and to bring it in that sense, I mean, many guys flirt with perfect games, but there really have not been many in the history of the game. And you think about how long baseball has been around. I think throwing a perfect game may be the single hardest thing that you can do in sports.
I mean, that's the thing, is how few have there been in all the years of professional baseball.
You're talking about around 20.
Yeah. That's what makes it elite, in my opinion. Like, a lot of people have 50-point games. A lot of people throw for 5 touchdowns, but not a lot can actually have said they threw a perfect game.
There's been 23 perfect
Did Patrick Mahomes' dad throw a perfect game?
He did not, because he was not a pitcher.
Oh,
but
I know he wasn't, but I had to ask since I brought up football in passing.
But there have been 23 perfect games in baseball history. So, and no pitcher has ever thrown more than one. Not even Nolan Ryan threw a perfect game. And he had 7 no-hitters. Make it out really well.
7 no-hitters.
7 no-hitters. But a perfect game is just that much harder. This has been a fun episode of Out of Bounds. Mia, big week for you. All or nothing.
Duval going to be lit Saturday night. Going to be making the rounds. I know already got Nashville radio I got to pop on Friday, and a couple others coming up. And I'm also going to go make sure that our pork tenderloin that I have in the oven is not on fire right now. I appreciate, though, all the super chats and the YouTube comments, especially from those here in Duval County. Go Jags.
Yes, we appreciate all of you guys. Thank you so much for tuning into this edition of Out of Bounds. We'll see you next week right here on Know Your News.